Welcome to the Big Fat Gay Podcast, where we talk about what's weighing on our minds. I'm Trevor Keyson, I'm a chub, and I'm a Gemini.
And my name is Michael Willer. I am a chaser, and I am an Aries. Don?
My name is Don. I am a chub, and I'm a Taurus. I am very much a Taurus.
Monster.
Oh, dear. I'm Dan Oliverio, and I'm a chaser, and I am also an Aries.
Aries for life. Oh, yeah. We're the best. So our first topic of the day, we have something that's definitely come up over the years that I've been paying more and more attention to movies, living in LA, is that you always see famous actors being put into fat suits to play the various roles that they're cast to play, as opposed to actually casting fat actors to play those roles. And one of the most recent examples of this was John Lithgow playing
Roger Ailes.
Yes, that's right, in Bombshell. And interestingly enough, he also played Winston Churchill.
Yes, in the Crown.
Yeah.
But there was an article, an interview with John Lithgow in IndieWire, and it was in October, but it's resurfaced. We're in award season, so people are kind of revisiting all this media about various movies that have come out this year. And John Lithgow really just kind of goes into a bad place, which I love John Lithgow, so it was really kind of upsetting to see him. They initially, when they started filming, he was not in a fat suit. And then they decided, he says in the article, it's like, I needed man boobs.
Right.
So half of the movie he's in a fat suit, and then the rest he's not, which I haven't seen Bombshell yet, so I don't really know if that looks weird at all.
And it was kind of an arbitrary thing too. He said, halfway through shooting, we decided that he needed man boobs, but it was based scene by scene on whether or not I felt like it, or whether or not it was a man boob scene.
What?
Which it was really arbitrary. It was kind of a strange decision.
I mean, my weight can fluctuate from time to time, but not like that.
I mean, he's not a thin actor. I mean, certainly he can kind of carry the body shape to a degree, but the fact that they had him in full prosthetics on his face, and then only half the movie he has the fat suit.
Well, and I think part of it is, so obviously given the movie, I think it's like, how monstrous do we want Roger Ailes in this scene? How disgusting do we want to make him?
Right, exactly.
Well, I was just curious what his assumption is. Like, as the actor, what governs his decision? Like, oh, I definitely need the fat suit for this scene. Is it because he's walking?
No.
Does he talk about that?
The way he does kind of talk about that, and the way that he puts it is basically how, like Trevor was saying, like how monstrous is he in this scene? Like how terrible is he going to be? Do we need the man boobs for? And it seemed like he was equating the fat suit to how awful his character was going to be. Or at least saying that he felt like he needed the suit to play those awful moments.
Yeah, if you're going to play the monster, you need to wear the monster suit.
Which is sort of the history of fat people in cinema.
Yeah.
When so we talked about this a little with Fat Thor in the first episode, and it's not like there's this transformation that happens where he's in a fat suit for half the movie because he's fat and then he loses weight. John Lithgow is an amazing actor, but there's no reason John Lithgow needs to play a fat character. There will be no, Ernest Hemingway tragedy, fat suit for sale, never worn, if we don't do this.
Well, by the same token, though, he's playing a real person, and that person was fat.
Yeah, but I'll bet that person was fat all the time.
That's a valid point.
Well, here's the interesting thing. I mean, maybe he was never like super fit, but there was a reference, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting which interview this was in, but apparently, was it Roger Ailes was saying, and maybe this is in the movie, but the quote was basically, I didn't always have to try and lure women because I wasn't always fat. And that's where you started getting some of that reference to like, well, if if we have him in the fat suit, it's also a scene where he's going to be a monstrous person trying to lure the women. It's kind of based on that quote. It's basically pulling from him saying it himself, saying, I wasn't always fat and I didn't always have to do this.
Yeah, and that sort of sets you up for, that movie.
I don't know the story well enough to guess, but I would assume that he's a pretty horrible person on his own. I don't know that we had to equate his weight to how horrible of a person he is in this story. Like, that seems unnecessary and not really related.
Well, I can't think of a time ever where a fat suit has been used to show somebody when they were in a better frame of mind or a kinder person.
It's always a joke or to show their kind of
Villainy.
it's so someone was, they were a fat joke in high school, or
Yep. I think one of the clearest examples is Monica and Friends.
yes,
Whenever you go back in time, she was a fat girl before she grew up and became conventionally hot.
yes,
But whenever you go back to the time, it's not just about her being fat; it's about her being clumsy.
yes.
It's about
she's fat
her
and
being
clumsy and disgusting and awkward.
And,
Yeah.
and most importantly, unpopular.
Oh yeah,
Oh, and she's always eating.
And she's always eating.
We also saw the male version of this in New Girl. The character Schmidt. It's not high school. I think it's college. They refer to Fat Schmidt. And it's the same thing with Monica, where he, in the present time in the show is sexy and confident and this kind of ladies' man almost. And then he is, the clumsy fat nerd, and he's gross, and it's
so expected.
yeah.
And honestly, like, isn't it such an easy trope at this point that even if you don't necessarily agree with the idea that, fat doesn't mean disgusting, even as a writer, shouldn't you at least understand the fact that this is such an easy trope that you should try something a little more challenging to write?
Well, they might not know he's fat if you don't have all those other indicators,
I know. I'm just saying, like, it's such a cliche, I guess is what I mean. It's such an expected cliche that can't you just, well, I guess we're talking about Hollywood and writing, and that's not
and again, I think
it's not always meant to challenge. Sometimes they are just going for the easy joke.
No, and I think you're letting them off way too easy here by saying cliche. It is not meant to be. It's not just lazy. It's meant to be insulting.
Yeah.
They're not being insulting by accident. They're meaning to insult. The character is bad because he or she is fat. That's
Right.
part of it. They're not accidentally fat. If they were going to say something nice about the character, or the character was sort of neutral, then you wouldn't hire a fat actor or put the actor in a fat suit.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
So one of the most recent kind of controversies in fat suit stuff was Insatiable on Netflix. I haven't watched. I don't think I can stomach it. The plot is basically a fat girl. She gets like punched in the face and her jaw's wired shut and she loses weight.
Ugh.
And then it is a revenge fantasy show where she is getting back at all of the people who were mean to her when she was fat. And they were arguing that the fat suit's okay because she's worse after she loses weight. So it's not a joke that she's fat. It's that she gets worse after losing weight.
Right.
Because she becomes the terrible person she's always wanted to be.
Yeah.
So it's a show, obviously. And so she has to start, I'm assuming in the first episode is when, the whole sort of inciting incident of her getting punched, the jaw's wired shut. And then after that, all the rest of the show is her thin and getting revenge on everybody.
Yes.
So is she just in the fat suit for that first episode, or is it like
no,
flashbacks?
I think it's flashing back and forth.
So it's a recurring thing.
I don't know if that continues into the second season.
I guess it doesn't really matter because they still threw in a fat suit and then.
Well, I think there's a bigger issue here than the fat suit. I think the bigger issue is that the premise of the show is that you cannot be fat and effectual. The only way she has any power in her life is that she has to lose weight. And then she can become a captain of industry, or she could become a real bitch. She chooses the latter. But the point is, you have no power until you lose weight. That's the premise of the show.
It's rare to see a larger person. I think that's one of the reasons with power. It's rare to see that. So I think that's one of the reasons why I really liked the Daredevil series, where you had Kingpin being portrayed as this very potent, very scary character. For me, it was refreshing and empowering to see that.
I was on the fence about that because that's true, but then also, I don't know if it's the second or third season where we're getting the flashbacks of, he's an emotional eater, he's damaged, because there's the scene where it's his mom, he's upset, and his mom's like, have some cake, and
I don't remember that.
I don't know if it's the second or third season, but it's kind of showing, he's actually this damaged fat kid inside.
But again, there you have the association with fat equals monstrous.
Yes.
Huh.
And how did he become a monster? Well, we'll tell you how he got fat.
I will say well, actually I can't say for sure because I don't remember it that well, but I don't remember in the first or second season of the show them really going into his being fat all that much. It really seemed like he was just a character.
He was just fat and evil.
And the Kingpin as a character,
but
like in the comics, is.
But he didn't have to shed his weight to become potent.
That's true. He's also evil.
But he's also very understandable.
I guess.
I got that character. I understood him, and I really enjoyed that. As opposed to the vague outline that fat characters tend to be.
Huh.
Like there was depth. There was a person there.
And I will say he has, I can't remember her name, but he has a woman that he's dating that's in love with him. And so, which, I mean, I don't think you see a whole lot of romance with them, but she is a real character who likes him for who she thinks he is.
Yeah.
They don't go into her liking him because he's fat, but certainly it's not this barrier.
I feel like we can't talk about this subject without bringing up the old chestnut. The first movie I saw where I really kind of became aware of fat suits being a thing, Shallow Hal.
Oh God.
Remember this?
Yeah, I do.
So for those of you who haven't seen the movie, it's Jack Black falls in love with Gwyneth Paltrow after being cursed so that he could only see people for their inner beauty, and their outer beauty, he would only be able to see their outside as a reflection of their inside.
Which is just such when you state that, is such a weird premise for like a curse. Because the whole joke is then like, oh, but they're really ugly, and like that's
well, it's because he's been such an asshole, and and I think he gets cursed by Tony Robbins, if memory serves.
Yeah,
you're right. And it's not a curse; it's meant to help him that he can value people for something other than their physical attributes, because he's a terrible womanizer.
But it's predicated on the idea that there is an objective measurement of beautiful and ugly, and that measurement is Gwyneth Paltrow is beautiful, and I don't know the actress's name, but whoever played the overweight version.
It was Gwyneth.
No, it was Gwyneth Paltrow.
Oh God, that part I don't remember. I guess obviously that's why you brought it up. But either way, like the fact that the fat version of her character is objectively ugly.
Well, actually, what's interesting, so that notion, so all of the other characters that he sees differently are played by different actors when they're beautiful versus
so they
ugly.
Just had the fat suit.
Well, and they're not always like fat versus thin either.
Yeah, it's
like
different.
the one quality about her that is unattractive, I'm using air quotes here, in the movie is that she is fat. Other than that, she looks exactly like herself. Right? Everyone else, they actually get a full body swap. Different face, everything.
Yeah.
Huh.
Most notably, there's a really fat Samoan who, when Jack Black under this influence sees him, becomes this model beautiful Pacific Asian actor. Like it's a different actor.
Yeah. Right. I don't remember. I may not have seen that entire movie because I think I refused point blank to watch the whole thing. But I do remember watching, oh God, what's it called? Is it The Clumps? What's the movie where Eddie Murphy?
So there's
The Nutty
Professor and The Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps.
Right. So when I first moved to LA, and this was almost 9 years ago, my roommate who thought this movie was absolutely hilarious, he insisted that I sit down and watch it with him. And he showed me The Clumps, and I sat through about 20 minutes of that movie, and I was just fuming, like more and more and more and more and more. And
I just have to stop and be. I have never met anyone who's like, the epitome of comedy is The Nutty Professor 2.
Specifically. It was. I mean, it's not my sense of humor in the first place, but beyond that, it was so aggressively offensive. It was just because everything was an eating joke, a fat joke, a fart joke because they were fat. Like that was the entire
everything relates
movie.
to the digestive tract. There was nothing else to the character but their gut system.
Well, see, that is a metaphor for
yes,
man's inhumanity to man.
Secretly clever.
Yeah.
No. Ugh. So relating to the fat suit issue, and I think this is the part that we've sort of danced around up to this point, is what happens when there are fat actors, and there are, who are perfectly capable of playing these roles and probably playing them much more honestly than a non-fat actor in a fat suit.
Well, it's because if you're a fat actor, you're not allowed to get the hero roles. You're not allowed to get leading man, leading lady, and therefore you're not going to be the famous actor. So if we want to make a movie and we want to cast a star in it, chances are that star is not fat. There are a couple of exceptions, but especially for fat men, there's basically two categories that you can fall into. You can be cast as the blue collar, big bellied, belt buckled, Kevin James in King of Queens,
generally warm or abusive.
Yeah, and that sort of man's man, very blue collar and not okay. Or you can be quirky, chubby, fluffy guy next door who has no love interest and is a gas, and you always have him over because he says the most outrageous things. It's kind of like the gay character.
Yeah, that's the James Corden did an interview. I forget with whom, but the quote was basically that if you get a part as a fat actor that isn't just playing the joke
Right.
of being fat. If you manage to get that far, then you own, and maybe even after that, if you get a romantic interest, which is a huge if, it's never a sexual experience. You never see them, kissing or doing anything more than maybe a peck on the cheek and a warm hug. It's very chaste. Or you're the best friend who makes the hot people feel very comforted.
Yes.
And and you're the sort of sense of support, but you're
supportive
never,
best friend.
Yes, you're the supportive
Always.
best friend.
And one of the things I do, with my coaching is when a fat person comes to me and we're talking about dating and we're talking about these issues, I often start with, so what role do you tend to fall into with your friend?
Right.
And a lot of times I do hear, oh, well, I'm the wingman. I'm the person whose shoulder they cry on. I'm the advice guy. I'm the funny guy. If they go out to the bar, often they have a lot of straight friends. So it's okay. I'm fat. I'm not going to pick up anyway. So we'll just go to the straight bar anyway.
It's a defense mechanism.
I've been guilty
isn't
of
it?
that.
I mean, it's a defense mechanism, because if you can't, it's almost like you've been trained to make yourself useful. Because if you don't make yourself useful, then you'll just get left behind by the people who don't want to be around you.
But the premise of all of this, and I think this is a really basic lie that we have going on, is that by and large in society, we think it's true that the opposite of sex is fat.
Right.
And that's why if you're fat, you can't be sexual. If you're fat, you can't have, a date. Well, you can have the B list or C list dates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're allowed that. And it actually actively upsets people. It upsets the community, whatever community you're in, when you date outside that class.
Oh, God. I just watched Pixar's short Lava this morning. I don't know if any of you remember this short. It's about a very large volcano who is male, identified as male in the song, singing this lovely song about how he hopes to find someone to love him. And he keeps singing the song and he's slowly sinking into the ocean. And this other very beautiful, thin female volcano is underneath the water that slowly rises up when she hears his song. And they eventually end up together. And there was this big outcry about, why does it have to be the gorgeous, thin woman with a big, fat volcano?
As if that spoils the whole thing.
It's a cartoon.
Oh,
that
man.
short was based off of is the Hawaiian
singer.
Who sang the famously "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." It's like in so many movies as that specific cover, and that was modeled off the real life relationship of him and his wife. But people are just
very upset.
Yeah, it's
but honestly, like I prefer that portrayal. So speaking of that, going back to actors,
right,
and this issue, it can be exhausting having to play that same character over and over. Every minority group has this issue. I had a friend who, for the first, I think it was 2-year period in the early 2000s, his entire year, he was an Asian American actor. He only had gay roles and rickshaw drivers. Those were the only 2 roles he got called in for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And for me, when I first moved out to LA, I was acting, and I couldn't take the constant dumb character archetypes being thrown at me again and again and again.
We'd like you to play the dumb fat guy.
Yeah, dumb.
Yeah.
There was I had one shot at a regular role on a network show, and I'm reading the part, and it's a Hawaiian police detective who eats the evidence during an investigation.
Jesus Christ.
Right?
Groundbreaking.
And so I go in, I'm reading this, and like I can't do this the way it's supposed to be. And so I knew I wasn't going to get the role, but I read the entire thing as sarcastic. Just dripping bitterness all over the place. And the casting director loved me. Like, that was great. But then they put me in front of the producers, and the response I got was verbatim. Wow, that was really interesting. That was really interesting. It was good. I like that. Could you do it dumber?
Because that's why we made the fat character, so he could be dumb.
Yeah. And that at that point, I'm just like, I know as an actor, I should be able to do this, but I just can't do it again and again and again.
Well, and that is the decision that I would say all fat actors have to face is, do you want to work?
Yep.
And if so, do you want to be the butt of every fat joke? And this
that's one of the reasons why I think we see so many fat suits, because honestly, a lot of these fat suit roles, I see them and I'm like, no fat person wants to do this.
But I think what's interesting, so, Dan was saying you don't get to be the hero, but in the case of Bombshell, that's not a hero role. That is a villain. That is, a monstrous role. But I think it's because I was trying to think of like, okay, is there a fat proxy to John Lithgow? and I couldn't think of anyone.
Well, again, you're not going to get that far in the game, in the stardom game in Hollywood, having a body that is that far outside the norm.
Yeah, I think that's where it starts. Is do we give a fat actor enough roles and enough cred to build up to the point that he has the kind of sway that John Lithgow has?
But here's what bugs me about it. Okay, so if I'm the movie producer, I think it's a legitimate argument to say, look, I want to put some star power in this role, and I want to cast John Lithgow. Or I want to put some star power in this role, so I'm not going to cast a fat actor because who's ever heard of a star who's a fat actor?
Right.
They're few and far between. Okay, so I'm going to cast John Lithgow, God's gift to acting. Why can't he just play it as that? Why do we have to make him fat? Like, if you're going to go down the John Lithgow train, if you're going to do that, why not just cast the actor? Why do we have to distort him to make him fat when we weren't willing to hire a fat actor in the first place? Like, it couldn't have been that important for you it couldn't have been that important that he be fat because you didn't cast a fat actor.
I'll agree with that if we're discussing fictional characters. But I got to say, if you're doing an autobiographical piece, you got to try and make the person look like the person they're playing, or cast someone who looks like them.
I don't necessarily disagree with that, but he played Winston Churchill without a fat suit.
No, and he was in a fat suit for Winston Churchill.
There was padding.
There was padding.
He didn't. Oh, that's what it was. He didn't have prosthetics.
No, but he did actually have something, I think,
in his mouth.
In his mouth.
It was like attached to his teeth to puff his cheeks out.
Puff his cheeks out and also help him speak in that kind of the
it was weird though because when he did
jowly sound to him.
But okay, so we see the fat suits, but then we also see actors gaining weight for roles, like Jared Leto in Chapter 27. I mean, talks about going on a crazy diet, drinking melted ice cream mixed with olive oil and soy sauce.
Yeah.
That just sounds disgusting.
Yeah, which I think he also says like, he felt disgusting, which helped him play
a disgusting fat person.
Yeah, a disgusting fat person. Which once again, that is a story. It's based off the guy who shot
John Lennon.
The guy who shot John Lennon. I said that earlier, but then it didn't feel right.
It's funny though, because like going back to our an earlier episode where we were talking about the guy who is playing the Blob. He was trying to play the Blob, and they were saying him, "We're just so concerned about your health because you're so heavy."
Yes. Right.
But yeah, Christian Bale gaining 200 pounds to play a role, that sounds real healthy.
Well, and Christian Bale is the first person he's actually said in interviews. People say like, oh, what diet do you want to lose all the weight afterwards? And he says, you don't want to know my diet. It's ridiculously unhealthy. I do not recommend it. But again,
and he goes in both directions. I've seen him go skeletal for roles too.
But see, there again is the catch-22. There are no famous fat actors, but we keep wanting to play these fat title characters. Yeah. And what it points to is that more and more Hollywood's idea of what people look like is not what people actually look like. So that when Hollywood stars try to play normal people, they're the wrong size.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it starts from the ground up. Because like you were saying, like it is reasonable for a producer to say, hey, this is, maybe this is a prestige piece role. We want a really qualified, famous actor to come in and give, lend their gravitas to this part, to the movie, because we probably can't afford it for every role. But you have to start from the ground up well before that, with putting fat actors into real parts, smaller parts, so that they can just do the same exact track the movie stars get, where you gain enough cred to get bigger and bigger in parts, but they have to be real. They can't just be playing the fat joke.
And this isn't a unique struggle either. The Asian American community has been going through this for literally 2 decades.
Many minority communities.
Many, but the Asian one has been specifically hit by just having Asian roles everywhere being played by white people or maybe Puerto Rican people, like vaguely brown people, which kind of pass as Asian for Hollywood terms. If you go back and see like King and I back in the day, I think there's one Asian person in the entire movie. Yellowface has been a big issue over the past decade, where all the starring roles over the course of a year for Asian characters go to white people. But the argument was always the same. There are no famous Asian actors to put in these roles. We need star power.
There's Emma Stone, Scarlett Johansson.
Right. Look, Don, they're right in front of you. Did you know Scarlett Johansson was also trans?
But it took 20 years for people actually to start listening to that community. And now we actually are starting to see Asian American stars, not just Asian American women stars, which we've had for a longer time. because Asian American men weren't sexy enough to put into movies. That was the argument.
You know what now that we're going sort of into the broader realm of casting other minorities to play the parts that they actually represent them. Don and I just started watching The Witcher, which I don't know if Trevor or Dan, you've seen it all.
I've only heard of it.
I'm really liking it so far, but there is something definitely that I'm very curious about. One of the characters has a sort of transformative experience where initially she is sort of a malformed character. She's
and spoilers for The Witcher.
Yeah, I guess I should. Yeah. Spoilers. It's in the first or second episode she's in. Anyway, she is born
She's
deformed.
a hunchback.
She's born deformed, but clearly the actress isn't, because she changes later in the show. And it's actually, as somebody who doesn't have that handicap, I can't speak to it. But for me, it actually felt like a genuine taking of power. Like her experience is in as a character. Oh, is this what the world wants? All right, well, screw you, world. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take the power. I'm going to take what's mine, and I'm going to do it your way because I choose to. And so she sort of transforms. But what I was getting at was, clearly the actress isn't actually that.
Yeah.
But part of the role was for her to change into.
Well, part of the problem is if you're going to have a character that has significant amounts of screen time in two different shapes, then you have to pick which shape and play the other.
Right.
Or you hire two actors.
You have no choice. Like I tend to have greater issue where they cast people to play a minority that they are not a part of constantly. Mm-hmm. So like I go back to Glee. The guy who plays Artie in the wheelchair is not in a wheelchair. He's not handicapped. Mm-hmm. But the character is handicapped throughout the show. They could have hired a handicapped person to play it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But in a role like this, where they have to flip back and forth, or even Shallow Hal, I'll admit it, you have two different shapes. You're going to have to pick one.
Well, but it's so interesting. So I didn't even think of this until Michael pointed it out. With Shallow Hal, they could have cast a different actress for
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Fat Gwyneth Paltrow. I can't remember the character's name.
No, they couldn't. You're not going to use half of Gwyneth Paltrow. Again, from the producer's point of view, you're casting the star not because not because they're good, and maybe because they look more of what they look like. You're casting them for what they're going to bring to the box office.
The star appeal.
The star appeal, and you can't have Gwyneth Paltrow in the lead, but not be that. But
we don't see her. I mean, whenever we see Fat Gwyneth Paltrow, it is usually like a sight gag.
Oh, of course it is. Of course it is. No, I'm just saying that the people who paid tickets to see a Gwyneth Paltrow movie want to see Gwyneth Paltrow. Mm-hmm. That's that, and that's independent of Shallow Hal or the fat politics or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, this all goes back to, again, the sort of grassroots idea that if you aren't giving fat actors real roles to play from the ground up when they are nobodies, so that they can't build their resume, you won't ever get fat stars. I mean, I dated an actor a little while back, and I mean, I actually edited his reel for him, and every role that he got, because he wanted to work, was some iteration on a fat joke. Usually he was eating pizza or dropping the pizza or whatever. In fact, I think he played a detective. I don't think he ate the evidence, but it was everything just short of that. Like it was everything you would expect from some fat joke walking actor. And
my first role in Hollywood was sitting in a rickshaw while a poor white guy had to pull me.
Right. Yeah,
that was the joke,
as a sight gag. But the thing is, I know, and this is not a unique experience. This is not groundbreaking, but I know that he is a very capable actor, and he can do much more than that. And he's like him, like many other fat actors, he won't be given that chance. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. That's where it all starts.
I agree with you.
So next week, I have to have some dental surgery. So this has kind of been weighing on my mind. So it's kind of about me, but it's really a Dan story. So it's, I guess this is an I never, or I guess it is an I. So my former dentist, the first time I went to see him, expressed concern about my weight, but not to me. He stepped out of the room and then went to Dan.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So I had been going to this dentist for a long while. He was the dentist when I first got to LA. I found him through a friend. And eventually when Trevor got to LA, I said, oh, you should come see my dentist. And Trevor's in the chair. And at some point, Trevor's still in the chair. Mm-hmm. And the doctor comes out, the dentist comes out, and he's just kind of scratching his head and looking really worried. And I'm like, why are you out here talking to me? Why wouldn't you be, if you had he looks concerned. And I'm thinking, why wouldn't you take up this concern with the patient if you were concerned? But why am I involved? Anyway, so he comes towards me and he says, he's just so big.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and the shock and the incomprehension in his voice. So he says, has he always been this big? Did something happen? I'm like, no, he's just a really big guy. Is there a problem? And he just can't get it. And he just sort of walks back to the chair, shaking his head. What?
Really, he just came out to comment on that?
He just came out to comment on that. I mean, I suppose you could make the specious argument that he wanted to know of any problems with his health that may not have been, I don't know.
But
it's nonsense. No. He came out to comment on how fat he was. And was this a new or intransigent condition?
He was 120 pounds when he went to sleep last night. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, that would have been the funnier answer if I thought to say it.
All that tooth weight.
You got to lose that tooth weight. I'm curious though, because this is not uncommon generally. I mean, that's a reaction that happens.
But a dentist?
No. From people generally, just the shock of your size.
Oh no,
not from a dentist. I'm saying I'm curious. Do you think it's an LA thing? Not unique to LA, but do you think if he had been in, say, Iowa, and Trevor had come in and sat down in the chair, do you think he would have done the exact same thing?
The same person, yes.
The same person.
The same doctor, of course. I don't think it's that. I think, as I say, fat is a localized event. So fat in Santa Monica is not the same as fat in Detroit, is not the same as fat in New York City or London or Dubai or Kazakhstan. Fat is localized. There are certain parameters that we operate in.
So the end result of this is that he stopped his procedure, walked out of the room where Trevor was to talk to Dan, to comment about how fat he was.
Had he started the procedure?
Yeah, I mean, I remember being in the chair and being like, what the f***?
Oh my God. He literally stopped drilling to walk out and comment. Oh my God.
Which I didn't know. All I know is the doctor's coming out to talk to me. I have no idea why. And he seems so befuddled.
And
we could do an entire episode on crap in the doctor's office, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
So this will be a good segue to our tip of the week, because this is something a lot of people have, usually not with dentists, but finding a fat-friendly doctor. Usually, like, as a fat person, when I first moved to LA and I was trying to find a new doctor, when I moved to LA, I started having really terrible allergy issues and was getting worse and worse. And like, I couldn't breathe. I just was always congested and kind of had this like raspy rattle in my chest. And I could not get a doctor to look at that. They're like, oh my God, you're so fat. Like all this stuff. And like, okay, well, let's, I want you to come back and I'll give you a referral for a nutritionist. And I'm like, no, actually, like, I'm having some really severe allergy issues. Can you look at that or give me something for it? And they just would not acknowledge that. They're like, oh, you're fat. That's the issue.
I went in with strep throat and the doctor wouldn't talk about my throat. Like, that couldn't be the issue. Clearly you're so fat, your throat is rebelling.
Yeah.
The cure for any malady, if you're fat, is weight loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how they assume it.
Well,
to this day, I always say this over and over. Every doctor I've gone to always seems so offended that I don't have high blood pressure or that I don't have diabetes. Like,
oh, yeah.
They're furious over it.
Well, because you're taking time bomb.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to
any second, you're just going to, your head's going to explode
everywhere.
No, and that's something that I call the wages of sin, because they look at fat and sin or fat and gluttony as a sin.
Yeah.
And so, well, you may not have it now, but just you wait. God's going to punish you for that.
It's like a lot of Christians from the 1980s with AIDS patients. Like,
oh yeah, just you
God
wait.
Sent it.
God just you wait. God will get you. Yeah.
It was at least 6 months I was suffering, and I eventually started being like, is there such a thing as a fat-friendly doctor? And I found a list. So the website was Cat and Dragon, and it was a list of fat-friendly doctors by state, and then you'd click on the state, and it would kind of break it down by city. So I found my current doctor from that list, who's like, they said he was fat-friendly. He's like kind of fat-friendly, but I walked in, and he's like, oh, well, you're pretty overweight. And I was like, actually, like, I got you from a list of fat-friendly doctors. I'm like, I don't know if you're on the list, but I would like to address these issues I'm coming in for. And if I want to lose weight. We can have the discussion later, but I've been suffering for a long time. I want to handle this. And it turns out I had like a sinus infection. I had a bronchial infection.
Oh, wow.
I had allergy-induced asthma. I mean, it took several like consistent visits to get these issues under control because it had been so long, which I think a lot of people have similar stories when they're fat and they are experiencing some kind of issue and they can't get it treated. And then sometimes it's fatal because, it's been, they had cancer and it wasn't diagnosed.
Even just to add to that, you were making the steps to actually go to the doctor and try and get treatment. I know people just anecdotally that refuse to go to the doctor because they know they're walking into conflict and judgment, and they won't even seek the treatment that they need because they're so afraid of that experience, which is it's consistent. Every time they walk into the office, they are walking into judgment.
Yeah, we have had a friend who was trying to get knee replacement surgery. They wouldn't do it, and like, you need to lose weight, but he's like, I can't lose weight because I can't move because I'm in such agonizing pain because I need new knees. And it's just this kind of vicious cycle.
And by the way, a study did come out fairly recently that weight does not affect the outcome of knee surgeries.
Oh,
yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, but see, no one had ever bothered to study because a lot of these studies, when you get into the medicalization of fat, you get into this mindset where we're not going to do a study on that because we already know the answer. And if we don't get the answer we know we're going to get, well, we must have done the study wrong.
Which comes back to our initial topic of fat-friendly doctors. Do you have resources?
So I found my doctor from a list. It's Cat and Dragon. All of these resources will be on our website, bigfatgaypod.com. If you go to this episode, click on it. I'll have all the links. Cat and Dragon, which unfortunately seems to be a little out of date. It was last updated in 2016. There's another, Your Fat Friend on Instagram created a post for people to kind of resource share, which I'll link to that post. So basically people were saying, I need a doctor in, Los Angeles, California, and people would reply to that. There's another list of the health at any size community, which mostly seems to be more kind of like therapists or some physical therapists, more kind of not medical doctors, but specialized care.
Yeah.
And then there was also a great article on Vice of this woman writing about her experience of trying to find a fat-friendly doctor. So this would be like, if you're looking at these lists, you don't see your city or anything, the steps you can take to contact doctors, what to say. Basically, like, she's kind of breaks down emails she would write to offices. So I think that's kind of a good last resort.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times you just need to know how to approach it in the first place. And if you follow a template that somebody else has set forth, that could be really helpful. Yeah. Especially because not everyone's going to have the kind of resources you could find in Los Angeles or New York or another large city. And so just knowing how to say the things you need to say could be really, really helpful.
Yeah. And if you have a fat-friendly doctor, please go to this Instagram post and share it because there is a need for this information.
Yeah, there's far too few. Relating to your earlier point, Michael, about people who won't even go to see the doctor because, like, who needs that hectoring? And you arrive with a sinus infection and you leave with a weight loss surgery brochure.
Yeah, which they always hand you.
Yeah.
Like it's like the first thing that happens when you walk through the doors. Here's the brochure.
Yeah, but something that you can kind of do that's much subtler to kind of take some power is, for a lot of people, the scale is very intimidating, and one of the first things you do when you walk into a doctor's office is they put you on a scale, and they're more apt to do it the fatter they see you are. Right. And so they want to know how much you weigh, and they will ask you your height, but they will put you on the scale for your weight,
for your BMI,
so you can get your BMI. But my point is, you can actually refuse that. You can actually say, "Oh, no, thank you."
In many cases, like my fat-friendly doctor, their scale can't weigh me.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And I was talking to, this was a woman in Finland. And in Finland, it's absolutely de rigueur. It's very systematized. Wherever you walk into an office, you get weighed. Doesn't matter who, every patient gets weighed upon arriving. And in Finland, it is quite a thing to say, no, I'm not going to get weighed today. I don't believe in that. No, thank you.
Yeah.
And nobody says, please leave the office. They don't light the torches and chase after you in ignominy.
Right.
Now, the medical people may make the argument that, well, we have to know your body weight because, if to give you, how much anesthetic are we going to give you and what dose of pill are we going to give you? Well, a couple of things. Number one, you're probably not in that doctor's office to get operated on that day.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, if they are going to prescribe something, they can look at you. They know you're a lot bigger. They know that you're twice the size of the person they usually see. They don't need you to get on a scale to confirm that.
Right.
And here's the ugly truth, number three. All of the inserts, all of the package inserts for any of the drugs they're going to prescribe you, were never tested on fat people in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
So they have no information about the drug at your weight. In fact, I would argue that in many cases, they have no information for the majority of their patients, because one of the ways you get a drug through medical testing is you don't test it on people who are too far away from the average or what you want. So people with a BMI over 25 are excluded from these studies anyway.
Which can have serious impacts on the effects of this stuff. I just watched the show Shrill.
Yep.
And spoiler for Shrill, I had no idea the day after pill doesn't work on women over 180 pounds.
Yes.
That is something that you should freaking know.
I didn't know that either. Did you want, Trevor, did you want to finish up your list? I don't know if you had any other.
Oh, no, that was the list. But we do have a diet bit, which.
Oh, yes.
Don is the only one who doesn't know this.
I'm very excited.
I am burning with anticipation.
So
As well you should be.
I was in a Lyft, and the Lyft driver's making conversation, and she said, "Oh, have you seen those ads for weight loss competitions on Facebook?" And I was just like, "Nope." Because already it's like kind of like, okay, red flag. General red flag. And then she's like, "Oh, well, I need to lose 40 pounds." But I was like, "Oh, this might be a good way to do it." And, they'll pay you money to lose weight. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like even further red flag. And she's like, so I went, it's in Culver City. I went and they told me how much weight I need to lose for this competition. I need to lose 20 pounds. And all I had to do was pay them $400.
Oh, God.
Wow.
And I could, if I lose
And they'll lose
20
the weight for
pounds,
you? That's awesome.
I just lose $400 in one simple step. And so no, she needs, it was maybe it was 2 to 4 weeks, but it was
whatever
20
length of
pounds.
time.
And it was, she'll win more money.
I don't think they were actually setting the amount of time for it to be an achievable goal. Like
that could be, yeah.
Like even if they were to honor it, like it's not in their best interest.
No, the business model is that you will fail.
Yeah, exactly.
Customer fails.
It
That's
is
their business model.
designed. Yeah.
But I have heard of this before, but I'm like, just everything about this being through Facebook, and like she goes to some place, they can, she steps on their scale, they can rig the scale.
Sure.
They could also just disappear during this amount of time. That she is
You pay us $400 and then come back sometime later.
Yeah.
Just show up.
But there are several of these apps, businesses, services.
Wow.
Do you have the name by any chance?
I wanna
Because
know
it'd be
what
great
they
to warn
do.
people away from that.
So I have a list.
Yeah.
There's Diet Bet, there is Healthy Wage, there is Stick with 2 Ks instead of a CK.
That's the one where they just beat you until you lose the weight.
With a stick.
Fat Bet, Lose It or Lose It.
Oh boy.
And so after telling this story, because I told Michael and Dan and a couple other people, I got a Facebook ad for The Winning Skinny.
Oh boy.
Which I think it's hard to say because Facebook's listening all the time.
Yeah.
But so I don't know if it's this one.
Creepy.
So I was researching this. People have had success. People have won money. And this goes back a couple years because I saw something from 2013. It was a Today article. Couple loses 120 pounds, gains $6,000. But at the end of the article, they say, and they basically gained a bunch of the weight back and they're working to lose it again.
Wow.
So it's...
I have to say, I'm stunned that they actually got the money out of that situation.
Oh no, one person's going to get some money.
Yeah.
And you're going to hear about it a lot by the company that gave them the money.
Or they didn't, and it's more publicity.
Yeah.
It's just never...
Maybe if you're really good at yo-yoing, you could game the system. Like you could gain a bunch of weight and then go in.
lose
Oh my God.
And immediately
if
lose
Christian
it.
Bale is in your group, dodge.
Get
Just
out.
get out.
Just
run.
Well, the recipe for getting fatter is usually going on a diet. So they have a built-in customer base.
Right.
In college, I had a friend who their mom approached my mom commiserating and having, we both have fat children. And what I do with my child is,
Oh dear.
I tell them $1 a pound.
Oh, God.
And then also, I think there was like maybe $5 every 10 pounds you get a bonus.
Bribing.
And
I'm trying to remember if I think my parents did that.
which,
No, they gave me weight loss incentives, but
well,
it
didn't
wasn't
they
$1
take you?
a pound.
Weren't you telling me the other day that they were taking you around to various different doctors to try and to teach you how to lose weight when you were a child?
Yeah. Well, and some of the nutritionists they took me to were insane. They took me to this one nutritionist who she said she was a holistic nutritionist. She asked me, "So what's your genetic background?" I'm like, "Well, I'm half Hawaiian, half Icelandic." She looked at me and went, "Well, the Hawaiian is clearly dominant. So what we need to do is we need to put more pork, we need to put more pineapple, coconut product,
Oh, God.
and taro root in your diet." And I'm like, "I'm in Massachusetts. Where the hell am I going to find taro root?"
But now, have you tried doing that?
Hey, if I could get by purely on pork, pineapple, and taro root, I might be a very happy man. I love all three of those things.
Well, that's a conversation.
after we record, we'll swing by the Hawaiian barbecue place.
Oh, I'm in. I'm so
we'll
in.
stock up. No, the diet episode, there's plenty to mine there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think that's our show for today.
Yeah,
And we're recording this the day after we launch, which is really,
so
really exciting.
It's nice actually knowing there's an audience and that people like it.
Yeah.
Instead of like
Thank
this false, like, oh, this is great. Everyone loves us. When it's like, no one's
Nobody's
heard this yet.
Thank you so much for listening to us. We
Yes,
appreciate
and-
all the comments. And
Yeah.
where can they write us?
Well, we have a few different channels. Trevor, do you want to hit us with the social media?
At Big Fat Gay Pod on Instagram, at Big Fat Gay Pod
Twitter.
on Twitter. You can search. I made a Facebook page. So there's the Big Fat Gay Podcast on Facebook. You can go to our website, www.bigfatgaypod.com.
And everything is housed there. If you only have to
Yes.
remember one thing, you can always go there to find the various resources.
Yeah, and that's where the links for the fat-friendly doctor information will be.
Right. So as far as where we're going right now, if you want to just add the RSS feed, that's on the homepage. If you need to subscribe and you can't find us somewhere, we should be most places. I think the last one we're trying to fix is Stitcher.
Yeah. Which by the time you listen to this, you might be listening to this on
Could be
Stitcher.
coming to Stitcher soon or already.
Could be a total non-issue.
Yeah.
But we definitely want to give like a really genuine and heartfelt thank you to the people who A, listened, and B, then got back to us and said how much they enjoyed it. I mean,
It
was
means a
kind of-
lot. We're not doing this for the money.
Yeah, it was really overwhelming. And honestly, my whole point for doing this is if I can reach one person who really, really needs to hear it, then that is well worth it.
And I've been loving the messages of everyone saying how cute they think Michael is. And that's why he's the cute one in episode 2.
Right, because we're all about the sex appeal here.
Faces for radio.
That's why I married the guy next to me. Jeez.
I'm the guy next to him. they can't see. But if you're listening in the car, there's someone behind you.
Look out.